The brain is the least understood organ, and yet is the very important organ because it literally runs our lives. Welcome to Mind Vault Podcast, where we unlock minds one story at a time. I'm your host, Dr. Clementine Chawane, and I'm looking forward to having thought-provoking conversations that will help you and your loved ones with regards to mental wellness and building resilience. Today, I'm having a music therapist. Her name is Alexandria, and I'm going to be reading her bio so that we can have a better understanding of who she is. All right. So Alex is born and raised in South Africa. Her name is Alexandria James, actually, and she's a multifaceted music educator, songwriter, and a music therapist. With a deep passion for the transformative and storytelling power of music, she received her master's degree from the University of Pretoria as a music therapist and works across diverse settings from substance use rehabilitation centers to specialized music education and youth community development projects. Through her creative and therapeutic work, Alex aims to empower individuals and communities by fostering reflection, growth, and self-expression through the language of music. Alex, thank you so much for coming through and welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Very excited to be here.
I'm glad. So, I love what you just said now about wanting to teach people the language of music. What is that? I've never heard of that in my life, but it's so fascinating to learn that music has a language.
Yeah, so I think I can't even remember whose quote it was. Everyone's heard the "where words fail, music speaks."
Wow.
Is one of the big ones. Music is a universal language as another one. And I think why it's important to look at it that way has to do with, and maybe this is just my takeaway, but a lot of where language comes from, I think we have this idea that music developed out of language or the other way around. And I think there's something much older and much more primordial that it came out of. Music functions as a language with many different dialects, as many languages. If you think about language as having musical components, you know that I'm asking you a question because of the way my voice goes up at the end of what I'm saying, right?
Yes.
Those are very musical things we do as people in general, that we attribute to language. But,
Wow.
Both are holding each other up, I think.
Wow.
in their effect.
Okay, I think even though I love classical music, which usually doesn't include lyrics, but lately I'm into lyrics and I love songs because of what they say, and most of our lyrics is in English. And so when you said the language of music, it's like you just stimulated my brain to think about a lot of things, right? So you're a music therapist.
That is the one.
And I must say as well that when I went into medical school, referring a patient for music therapy I don't remember it being part of, the things that were recommended. And so I was very fascinated when I first met you and you told me that what you do. And so I want you to tell us, what is music therapy?
So this one takes some thinking, because one of the jokes we make about training is you start off defining what it's not.
Okay.
But music therapy is very much, it's an evidence-based use of music to meet therapeutic goals, much in the same way that language functions in psychotherapeutic and psychological approaches. It's mostly based on what are the parameters of music and what are the features of music that can be used to achieve those therapeutic goals.
Okay. Okay.
That's what it is in a nutshell.
What is it not?
We can look at it as a universal language. Yes, it is accessible to pretty much anybody, music, whether they define themselves as musical or not.
Yeah.
But there are safe ways of using it. There are musical memories that trigger bad or negative or unpleasant spaces for people.
True.
So then, like, one of the things music therapy is supposed to establish is where those lines are.
Okay. What made you study music therapy? Can you walk us through your journey of how you became a music therapist?
If I'm being honest, I read a book.
Okay, please.
I read a book. I can't even remember the title of the book, but it was a fiction novel. It was a Jodi Picoult novel, and the main character was a music therapist.
Okay.
And I remember resonating so much with this character. So finding out that this was like a profession and reading up on it, when I was in high school,
Yeah.
I was like fascinated by this idea that, you can actually like train to use music, like use music in
therapy.
these ways
Yeah.
that are driven towards helping other people and creating good, positive, safe spaces for other people.
Great.
So that was the drive to picking up such an odd profession.
Is it an odd profession? Why do you say it's odd? Is it because it's still new in our society? What do you say it's an odd profession?
I think my argument is that we've actually been using music therapy for a very long time.
Yes.
As an like academic qualification in the country. It's a fairly new one.
Okay.
I mean, we recently celebrated, I think, 25. Now she's losing count. The symposium last year celebrated 25 years of the profession,
Okay.
which is like long. It's a wonderful milestone for the community, for
Yeah.
arts therapists in South Africa, but that's still a very young profession.
Okay.
So it is quite new.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of people understand, how, but I can do this on my own. I mean, people say very much the same thing about other therapy approaches as well,
Yeah.
anyway, though. So, yeah, that's why I called it ARB. It's not ARB.
It's not. Yeah, it's not. It's not. I didn't know that it's 25 years old. I thought maybe you would say it's like 5 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is something that is recognized by the HPCSA, right?
It is.
Yeah. So what is the science behind, you said that it has clinical evidence. What is the science of music in therapy, if I may phrase it like that?
So, if we have to compare it to other psychotherapy approaches,
Yeah.
where you might have a psychotherapist using very psychodynamic or psychoanalytic approaches,
Yes.
those can underpin music therapy approaches.
Okay.
But the difference is you'll be using musical affects and musical features to guide those processes, much in the same way, again, that you'll be using language to do those things.
Okay.
So, music, the things that music can be used for that language can't, for
Yeah.
example, might include, bodily regulation, individual, like internal regulation, in a way that I don't think it's fair to say that language and words can't do that.
Yeah.
But there's something very like internally recognizable about this is a musical interaction
Okay.
that forefronts. I heard one of the speakers at a seminar I attended recently say that whatever allows for embodiment of the experience is the mechanism for change and transformation.
Wow.
So when music does that, in music therapy,
Yes.
there we have music therapy.
Because the aim is to heal and transform. Hey.
So it's very much like a mind-body health orientation,
Okay.
but it has more to do with what it can bring to the fore.
Okay. So all you do is play music. So like, what if someone had to come and see a music therapist? What should they expect? Should they bring an instrument? Are we going to be playing music from start to end? Or are we going to talk and then you understand who I am? And then we go into therapy. Like, how do you tailor the therapy to individuals as well?
So speak about what I'll do first
Yes.
and then work backwards. I prefer not to start off by reading patient files in that first engagement,
Yeah.
because it's nice to get to know this person as a person, like how am I receiving this person? How are they reacting to me? Going in without the bias of those.
Okay.
Because music being such a creative and very culturally specific engagement
Yeah.
means that thinking of the interventions in terms of diagnosis first
Yes.
can be a bit counterintuitive.
Yeah.
So what to expect? I mean, some of the three main types of interventions you'll use. We've got methods and you've got frameworks. Some of the main types will include active music therapy, and that's where you will go in and play that's where you'll use your voice. You'll use the instruments in ways that are guided by your therapist, be it improvisatory or long processes of writing and composing, and then reflecting on that process. You work with receptive types of interventions. That'll be more working with recorded music or existing music or like client's personal taste, because people's musical identities can be very telling. You carry it with you throughout your life, your earliest memories of growing up in a house or in a space with this music, to what was the music that you were listening to at your most rebellious phase in life, to now as a person who's fledged in that moment. That identity is very culturally informed by music.
Yeah.
So what to expect kind of depends on what those needs are. Do they need a space to actually like express and let loose? I've also had, ironically, when I was working on a project where most of the clients were artists, this was for Lefika Lapotisa, the Children's Memorial Institute. What was quite fascinating was our clients being artists. Sometimes they were like, I do this all the time. I need to not, can we not use the music as the forefronted thing? I just need to talk right now. I just need to share. I just need to, and then working with those. So in much the same way an improvisation happens, they bring what they bring into the room. And you make it
work
music.
with that. Wow. Okay, great. And so, like, who comes to you? Are people who are musical? Are people who are struggling to express themselves using words, but they can express themselves in a song? I mean, for me, I have one of my clients, an autistic child who's mute but sings.
I actually had a very similar experience with a little girl with autism when I was working at a specifically abled specific needs school.
Yes.
There was a young girl who was referred to me, and one of her presentations spectrum presentations was echolalia.
Yes.
So also selective mute, but echolalia was,
which is
repeating what you say, which
yes,
is
yes.
So she kind of, that was
She
her
repeats
main
everything
mechanism.
you say. Yeah.
And like over time, what came to happen was we'd kind of continue that and we'd kind of go into it until it became a rhythm. And what she ended up doing was, as soon as you catch that and you keep whatever rhythm you're working with on the guitar, she started singing along. And she started kind of making up her own, songs. Making up her own lyrics. Like the melody was completely her own. The words were completely her own. And in that way, that was the first time I'd gotten to see her interact with that.
Wow.
So I think that was kind of a really nice testimony to like, wow, okay, music nogal can do this.
Hey, it does activate
something out.
It's about expression, hey?
It is.
It's like, how do I express how I feel through music? And when we say music, does it mean lyrics? Does it mean guitar? Does it mean a piano? Does it mean drums? So like when you walk into a music therapy, I'll say studio, do I say, well, I resonate more with drumming and I want to drum to express my emotions. And like how does it work if someone walks in and they have a preference for specific instruments? Do you have all the instruments in the world?
Oh, I wish we could have all the instruments in the world,
Yeah.
right? That would be amazing. But it is nice to have those options, because that's one of the things that's one of the first kind of okay, this is what we have to work with. When they do express that preference,
All right.
it's already a step forward. It's already them taking on their own agency, their own taking on their own autonomy is very much something that's encouraged in the music therapy space. So typically, yes, if there's an affinity for a particular instrument or for a particular way of engaging, we'll kind of work with that, unless it's very much a space where now this client is, one of the goals is now working towards breaking out of the discomfort of unfamiliar. So you might get to a point where, okay, this person using the drum points to a sort of perseverance, for example. Then you'll kind of start changing the pace, or like in music, you'll start changing the tempo a little bit. Try to work them into something newer, but that's still kept comfortable, because we do have the regulated things of rhythm and tempo. We do have regulated parameters of melodies and harmonies, things that help them work through that process safely. So it really depends on their needs in that time, and giving them as many options as possible to fully realize that expression.
Okay, great. So how, like, which people then come to a music therapist? Like, if I, as a psychiatrist, see somebody and I would like to refer them for therapy, and I'm not sure which one I should choose, right? What would help guide me to know this person is musical, or should it be a child is mute and not able to speak? So like what are the parameters, what are the things that I should look out for to say this person would be much suited for music therapy?
So there I would almost say there's an either or, in terms of the expectation that somebody must be inherently musical to seek out music therapy. Is a question we get a lot about, like, oh, but do I have to know music? Do I have to do this? And my kind of counterpoint is usually, well, if you didn't have inherent musicality, you would function way less efficiently. The heartbeat is a musical feature. Your rhythm when you walk is a musical feature. Your eat, sleep, wake cycle is like a macro musical feature, purely because they have rhythms. So that's kind of my argument to, oh, but I'm not musical. Can I actually do this?
Everyone
Absolutely.
is musical.
Absolutely, because much in the same way, people seek out any therapy to serve certain needs. I think if it's not supposed to make you feel better, it's supposed to make you better at feeling. Music therapy functions in very much the same way. It's supposed to bring out the music that's there and make you more aware of how that works for you, how you can work with that, if that answers the question.
It does, but this thing that you just said, that it's not supposed to make you feel better, but
seeking out therapy as the aim, not to make you feel better, but to make you better at feeling. And that one I very much stole. Very much stole that line from a colleague.
Yes.
But I think the point was that people seeking out music therapy need not define themselves as inherently musical, because your therapists are already defining you as such. There's one concept that we kind of hold quite dear, and now for the life of me I can't remember who the original author. It was Nordhoff Robbins. That approach is one of the oldest approaches as far as music therapy is concerned. And that there's a school in New York who works with this Nordhoff Robbins therapy approach, and they work with mostly children with special needs, but like particularly needs that where their communication skills and regulation skills are just not skilling.
Yes.
It's a creative approach where they deal with what they call the music child. And that's this idea that because if you were able to learn language, if you were able to learn skills, you are inherently musical because as we said earlier, there's a bunch of already musical things that have taken, that you've already developed.
Yeah.
And music therapists are supposed to be able to hone in on those features first.
Okay.
So we'll usually get people who either struggle with self-expression. If we're talking, a lot more cognitively abled, we'll get anybody who is able to express themselves and just need space to get louder with it, to people who need to work on bringing up that level or bring up their needs from their own capacity for self-expression.
Yeah.
And then, as you said, we'll often get referrals for people whose language or communication skills are hindered by the needs that took them to therapy in the first place.
Yeah.
So where psychotherapists are finding that language and verbal communications and interventions are not working, that's when they'll bring in us noisemakers.
Yeah. And what kind of noises do you make? Is it lyrics? Is it everything? Like, what kind of noise do you make?
So I am, and this is maybe the musician identity. I'm very much a, I'm very much a lyrical and melodic girly. That's kind of like the core of my musical identity. Even you spoke about classical music not having lyrics, and lyrics being something that you find yourself quite drawn to.
Yeah.
Like I myself feel like good lyrics, for example, are melodic in their nature, and good melodies are lyrical in their nature. And it kind of comes back to where music and language very much do this, work together.
Yeah. So you put a beat in the background, and someone who struggles to sit with a psychologist suddenly start expressing how they feel.
Yeah, it kind of adds another dimension to this existing thing. That, Would you repeat the second half of that question?
No, I was saying that is it more like, you would have someone coming in and they struggle speaking to a therapist, because they find it intimidating or they don't find the right words to say. But suddenly when you put a bit in the background, then they come alive, and they're able to say things that they wouldn't otherwise say in a conversation. They have a conversation, but with some music in it.
Maybe one example that's a really good analogy, because one example that brings up is one of the principles that music therapists work with is of dynamic affects. So this idea that I can't access Dr. Chawane's feelings. I can't access those. Those are not my feelings. Those are not my feelings to access. What I can access is the quality of those feelings. And so is it a pain? Is it a searing pain? Is it a smarting pain? Is it a dull pain? Being able to reflect on the features of those things are something that arts therapies in particular, music therapy, but arts particulars in general are uniquely positioned to deal with, because you're dealing with features that are describable, subjective, creative in their nature. So how does this person embody that? How can they embody that? What are the ways in which they're lacking that embodiment? So by the time you're getting a psychotherapist who's been having, for example, the same conversations over and over with a client, a music therapist might bring in an intervention whereby they need to write songs or create improvisations with a music therapist, create improvisations with that theme. And in reflecting on that theme, they'll already have done something different. They'll already have done something that strayed from the experience that they kept speaking about with this with the psychologist, for example. The words are staying the same. Is, for example, obviously oversimplifying, but psychologists might find, okay, the words are staying the same, the attitude is very much staying the same. What a music therapist then can bring, arts therapy in general brings in, is you have to now, you are kind of having to express this in a very different way. And in expressing it and then reflecting on that nature of expression, they've already changed the experience based on whatever the product was, be it the artwork or the song or the improvisation that they now have to speak about. That's already a very different expression of this theme or topic.
Okay, I get you.
So
I get you. And, before we started, you were having a chat with the crew, right? About the different pitches and how some people can listen to certain music if you want to study. I remember there was a time when they were selling specific music for studying, and they say if you have concentration problem, if you have ADHD, you can just put this earphones and then some music will play and it will help you focus. And I have another client who has severe post-traumatic stress disorder, gets tense, palpitations, panic attacks all the time. And she has found that what grounds her has been music therapy. She has been through all therapies and is working hard to gain back her life that has been taken by the trauma. But she was really battling, and now she goes to a music therapist, and then they have sort of like structured something for her. And like you're saying, it keeps evolving to not like this is what you listen to calm her down, because her brain gets used to that. And so they have to keep changing the tone or whatever it is that they're changing to help her still ground herself, So I want us to talk about that, the different pitches, the different music, and how it really works in our mental well-being.
Break away from the pitches question. From start from the bottom up, being a bit of a musician here. But if we start from your rhythm, your baseline section, you've got rhythms, and if you think about what certain tempos might imply in a scene from a movie, for example, if the scene now opens with very much a or you've now set up your expectation of what's happening emotionally in the scene. What is being what do they want us to understand is happening in the scene? There's obviously something that's quite like quite intense, high energy. There's a little bit of suspense, for example, versus something that's very slow and a little bit more suspenseful is going to give you a much more hold your breath and wait. And sense of what needs to happen here. So that's kind of where the rhythm component comes in. I spoke earlier about the dynamic affect. So how you'd work with that is we like to think that if I'm happy, if I'm sad and I want to cheer myself up, kind of the logical thing to do is go and listen to happy music. But it's really that tends not to be the case. It tends to be a lot more helpful, and obviously we're simplifying certain things, but it's a lot more helpful to go with where are you? What is the song that actually captures the sad you're feeling now? And then work up the tempo from there. That's kind of a principle we call matching in music therapy, matching and attunement. So working with where the client is key-wise. This person's very much in A flat. We can't just go straight to D because that's not a good, giving metaphors here, but it's kind of modulating in that space. So the question there was about how lo-fi music specifically might function for beats to study, sleep, relax to. Kind of what I would tentatively attribute that to is if you think about lo-fi music, the kinds of things the playlists you'll find on the internet, if you think about the features of that music, they tend to be very mid-range tempo. So it's not something that's like dragging or like keeping you very much down.
No.
The structure of the music is not wildly changing. So suddenly we all in and suddenly there's only a guitar. It'll be very uniform changes in the music that stay here. Very minimalistic. Like even if you think of the idea of lo-fi, you're dealing with low fidelity, which if you think of soundscapes means very recognizable features in the music. So I can very much hear that these are the drums, here are all the instruments, here's what they're doing. I'm not expecting any shocks from section changes. I'm not very distracted by really intense or really powerful lyrics, for example.
Yes.
You've got very simple but very effective features of the music. And that's what I think is about that particular example that makes it to relax, chill, sleep, study to. For just rolling with that example.
Wow. Okay. Lots to learn, but I'm really, really very fascinated. I mean, some of the things when you speak about keys, that's the only thing I understand, right? Is the keys and the keyboards, because I used to sing and I put an A and, and I knew that when we have to transition from one key to the other, it was not from A to D, right?
Yeah.
It was A, okay, I don't know if it follows the sequence, but it was that, like you would see that, okay, from this key, we're going to that, and then we're going to transpose to this. And it warmed you up and, you had anticipation that, okay, this is going to happen. And you felt like you are in control. I loved it when you said that, people would be sad and they think, let me play a happy song to get away from my sadness, but that doesn't really work. And so sometimes it's good to start with, I'm feeling sad, and so I'm going to listen to music that will make me connect with how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
So So if I have a heartbreak, it's good to listen to love songs that will make me cry before I move on to finding new love, right?
Yeah.
So it helps you process your emotions now. And then once they're processed, then let's change the tune.
Exactly. So and maybe that's also me oversimplifying. If it works for them, it works for them.
Yes.
But the recognition is obviously, as any therapist would recognize, how is this working for you?
Yes.
Needs to kind of be the first question.
Okay.
So.
Wow. Okay. All right. Okay. I needed to simplify it for myself, to understand how it really works. But I feel like that was very, very informative. You said that you worked with substance use rehabilitation centers.
Yes.
Did you witness any clinical good outcome from that when it came to music and substance abuse? Or that was not the aim, right? Sometimes that's not the aim. It's not that you're gonna stop using, but
that one at the time I had to stop and think about it, because at the time, in the moment, in my mind, you're like very much sitting in this space, sitting with the reflections and all the notes and feeling like, but there hasn't been any change.
Yes.
And the more you go back over it, and you can see like the smaller changes. So one of the examples, one of the centers I worked at was a halfway home, a halfway house in Jeppystown. And that was mostly groups. We mostly worked in groups. It was all men, all adults. But at first, you notice, and I very much had to be aware of the fact that, okay, I'm like a young woman in a space of men, and obviously they're going to react in very specific ways, very much not wanting to, I can't swear in front of a lady.
Yes.
Or I want to, you very much want to be the gentleman and that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And I think what I very much had to be aware of was taking control of how these clinical changes will actually manifest without these people, like trying to impress or trying to prove that I'm getting better.
Yeah.
Like the increased engagement in music therapy as the process went on, because it was a couple of months, the process.
Yeah.
And by the end, it had more to do with how openly and how much more freely everybody was interacting with the music, with each other as well, for example. I mean, one of the examples I took to my clinical supervisor, because I'd borrowed a bunch of djembes from the university. And I took it back to them with one of the skins completely destroyed.
Yeah.
And I had to go back to her and say, I'm so sorry that this happened on my watch. But actually, you have to understand, this was done by the quietest member of the group. So I'm quite chuffed that I'm sorry the drum had to take the brunt of it. But this... obviously
himself.
The drum needed to take this because he needed to do that.
Wow.
So... those subtle changes eventually add up and add to the song, if that's kind of the metaphor you want to run with as the process.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
all right. So sometimes the the aim is not to change people, right? Sometimes it's to understand them, and sometimes it's to help them understand how they feel. What they do with it is entirely up to them, right?
Offering them safe spaces to feel it in its entirety. And I'm not trying to change you. I'm not trying to change your music. I'm trying to play and add to it. And from that, if something useful comes, there already is, a marker of progress. So that's not to say, oh, the music therapy is successful if this person doesn't go back to using. Because unfortunately, that's a tall ask with disorders like substance use disorders. But
you were able to connect with some part of them.
If there's something in the process that kind of holds a mirror up to them in ways they can go, oh, but now here's this whole new part of myself and my ability to express that. If that's all you can bring to the space, there's already a little bit of improvement there. Small improvements, but I think still powerful ones.
Yes. Wow. Okay. Very beautiful. Very beautiful. We're coming to the end of our episode. Is there anything that you would like to say to our viewers, anything that is in your heart in line with music and music therapy, please? Putting you on the spot.
Anecdote. Am I allowed an anecdote?
Yes.
When when I was studying, we had this exchange program with these Norwegian music therapy students who we had a project to work at Lentegeur, the psychiatric hospital in Cape Town. And I remember after we did a whole lot of process reflections, one of the things they spoke about was South Africans, you guys are so expressive. You guys are just so ready to create. And you guys are just so ready to sing with and create music with other people. And that's something that they were so mind blown by. They just loved being in the country just because of that experience, just how expressive and musical everyone was. And it was kind of please hold on to that. Please hold on to that musical child. We need it. We need it. We are those people. South Africans are those people.
And it will help us heal.
It's a superpower.
It will help us heal. It will help us transform. Right? Just like your goal. All right. Okay. Well, we could have more and more chats around this, but our time is limited. We're going to have more. And hopefully next time you can come and give me the drum. Let me see what's in here.
I didn't even think about an experiential. You imagine having to deal with the drums and that in the sound.
Yes, I would like to. Editing. I think I might be the one that breaks the drum skin.
It's okay. Because, I'll bring more. I'll bring extra.
I need to challenge myself to really see what is in here. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that was very, very informative for you. I love something that she said, and I'm going to think deeply about this, where she said the aim is not to feel better, but to be better
at feeling,
right? And so it's okay for you to feel what you need to feel. And it's not always that we want to get rid of these emotions, especially the ones that are heavy and overwhelming. If you sit with them, you can actually overcome them. So we'll see you next time. And until then, love your mind.